Steam Frame news has been a bit quiet lately, but a few bits and pieces have trickled out since my last video that I think are worth going through. Nothing massive on its own, but I still want to talk about it, so let's get into it. Now the big one for me is that we're starting to see Steam Frame compatibility ratings show up for some games on SteamDB for the very first time. Valve's clearly been testing games to see how they run on the frame, and both VR standalone and flat screen games, and the results are now public. As of recording this video on July 7th, there's only 3 games on there. Day of Defeat is sitting at unsupported, Border 2 is sitting at playable, and Into Black is verified. Now, Into Black is a first-person VR action-adventure game. You're on some alien planet, mining, crafting, fighting things off in the dark, solo or co-op, and it started live as a Quest game and then came over to Steam VR, and this is an actual VR title running standalone on the Steam Frame, which makes it the interesting one out of the 3. Now, Day of Defeat and Portal 2 are both flat screen Source games. One is unsupported, one is playable, and then the native VR game is the one that lands on verified. I'll have a clip of the game so you can get an idea of what a verified standalone VR game looks like. The clip I'm showing is not the game running on Steam Frame, it's just the game running on some headset, but you can get an idea of what it looks like. And look, the verified as a badge doesn't always mean a whole lot in practice. Anyone who's owned a Steam Deck knows that, but for standalone VR specifically, it's at least telling us the thing runs on the device and hits Valve's requirements, so I'll take it. And that Quest heritage I mentioned, I think is relevant. Actually, those are exactly the kind of games that being ported over to Steam Frame, be it PC VR or as an Android title, is what will make the frame just a bit more enticing for VR users. Now, on the actual rating themselves, Valve has gone and published the criteria for the Steam Frame verified program in the Steamworks docs. We've talked about this before, so we don't really have to guess at any of this. It's a direct extension of the Steam Deck compatibility process, so it has the same structure. Valve will review a game against a checklist and developers get a point-by-point results back, and then the badge will show up in the store and in our libraries. And again, it's pretty similar to the Steam Deck verified system. There's 4 badges. Verified means it passes every check and needs no configuration from the end user at all. Playable means it runs, but you might have to do some manual work yourself. Selecting a community controller config, for example, or bringing up the on-screen keyboard or tweaking some of the settings to hit a certain performance bar. And then unsupported means it doesn't function properly. Usually it's an issue with Proton or FX or hardware incompatibility, or maybe the game has a launcher. And then there's unknown, which is just a game that hasn't been through the review process yet. And that's most of them right now, which is why we've only got 3 showing up so far. Now, as per Valve's own recommendations for 2D games, so your flat screen stuff, you need a minimum of 30 FPS at 720p to get verified. For VR titles, it's a minimum of 72 FPS at 1728 by 1728 resolution. And there's a hard floor on the VR side. If a game runs below 1440 by 1440, it doesn't just miss verified, it gets marked as unsupported. It doesn't even go into playable. So that's a real resolution and real frame rate minimum being enforced here, which I like. It means the badge actually carries some weight, and definitely more weight than the Steam Deck verified badge. This time around, they're targeting specific performance, unlike on the Steam Deck, where it's still a bit vague what Steam Deck verified really means. Now, that 30 FPS and 720p target for flat screen games running through FX, it kind of matches my experience trying to run PC games through FX on my Android handheld, the Odin 3. Now, the Snapdragon processor in my Odin 3 is faster than what Valve has in the Steam Frame, but we don't know what dark magic they're gonna pull to get these games working, maybe even better than what I'm expecting. Now, this is really my main interest in the Steam Frame, not because I want to play flat screen games on a VR headset, but because I'm interested in the technology and the idea behind converting x86 games to ARM. But what about you though? Are you interested in the Steam Frame for proper VR, be it PC VR or standalone VR, or more for the standalone flat screen games side and just the actual tech behind it? Let me know down in the comments, what are you most looking for in the Steam Frame. Now, on the input side, the requirements line up with some grip stuff we'll get to in a bit. Now, VR games that render controller models have to show the frame's own controllers, and the default controller config has to give you access to everything without you diving into the in-game settings to fix it. So glyphs have to match either the Steam Frame's buttons or Xbox buttons. Basically, it has to just work with the controller out of the box without you fiddling with it. And one last thing I want to mention on all of this whole review process only applies to games running locally on the Steam Frame in standalone mode. If you're streaming a game from your PC to the Steam Frame, none of this applies. It's purely about on-device play. It's kind of given that if a game runs on your PC, it should stream pretty well on the Steam Frame. Now, alongside the ratings themselves, SteamDB has also added dedicated filters for the frame. You can now sort by Steam Frame playable, verified, and unsupported now, the same as with the Steam Deck filters we've had for years. And right now, each of these is sitting at a single game that I mentioned in the start, so we don't have a ton of info, but it might start to get populated pretty soon with more and more games. There is no Steam Machine verified filters, even though the Steam Machine is already in the hands of consumers. There isn't even a badge on the actual Steam store for that. I'm not sure what the holdup is. Valve did say that they have the same program that they do for the Steam Deck, they have it for the Steam Machine and for the Steam Frame, so I'm not sure why that's not showing up yet. Moving on the backend side, there's been a couple more bits of movement. The Steam Frame's Welcome Tour has started showing up in Steam Tracking and in multiple languages, and localizing something into a bunch of different languages usually means that the thing is ready and you're about to make it public. That's really my whole read on this bit of news. This is like the last bit of things you try to finalize before getting it out there, so this gives me hope that the Steam Frame is close. There's also the Wi-Fi dongle driver, which got marked as released on the Steam's backend, and I'll be honest, I'm not totally sure what to tell you about this one. I talked about it in my last Steam Frame video, and we can't really get a ton of info from it. It is probably being used by developers who have the Steam Frame dev kit, or by reviewers who have the Steam Frame in their hand. People like Linus Tech Tips or Gamers Nexus. It's not an app you download like a normal package, so the status change is a bit ambiguous. It could be that Valve is lining up the PC side software for launch, could be prepping for reviewers. All I know is that it's just some bit of movement, but beyond that, it's just speculation on what that really means. If you guys are enjoying this news roundup, I cover Steam, Steam hardware, Steam Deck, Steam Frame, gaming handhelds, all of that. If that sounds like something you would watch, consider subscribing to the channel. Now, on the shipment side, the @hardware Steam account on X spotted another batch of Steam Frames arriving at Valve's US warehouses, plus a couple of more Steam machines. I think that brings the running total to something like 14 Steam Frame shipments right now. We saw the exact same pattern with the Steam controller and then with the Steam machine, hardware piling up in warehouses right before the announcement. And on top of that, the Steam Frames page on the Komodo storefront got modified recently, and Komodo handles distribution for Japan, Taiwan, and Hong Kong, so that's another retail side thing that indicates stuff is moving and happening, but we can't really say what's happening. Something is happening. Now, I would be a bit careful with all of this because a lot of people are reading it as launch is imminent, and I don't think that's quite it. I don't think we can really extrapolate anything from it. Valve is still working through the Steam Machine reservations right now, and I don't think they're going to run two randomized reservation queues at the same time. I think they're gonna have to wait for things to quiet down a bit with the Steam Machine. So to me, the machine reservations clearing is probably the actual thing that has to happen first, and it's going to be the signal that something else will happen with the Steam Frame. I think that side, the Steam Machine reservations and shipments going out for Steam Machines and people actually getting the Steam Machines seems to be going really smoothly. There's been some reports of issues with the machines overheating and stuff like that, but Valve seems to be working through all of that. And inevitably, there's going to be a bunch of hot fixes that are going to get out. So they're focused on the Steam Machine still right now. But after that has all cleared up in the next weeks, is probably when they're going to turn their attention to the Steam Frame. If I had to guess, I would say the Steam Frame will land any week from now until the end of July. Valve tends to do reviews Monday to Wednesday rather than dumping news on a weekend. So it could be any Monday to Wednesday this month. That's about as specific as I'm willing to get. And what's your guess? When do you reckon the frame actually launches? Drop it in the comments below. Now the last thing, and probably the coolest to actually look at, Climbey developer Brian Lindenhoff put out a video testing his game on the Steam Frame dev kit, and there is a good bit of info in there. For one, we get a proper look at the new Aurora environment, the one that's been data mined to death over the last few weeks, now actually assembled and running. This is the kind of backdrop that we would have in the theater mode while playing flat screen games, or at least in the home screen when you first launch the Steam Frame. That's what you're gonna see. And I think the software in general looks a fair bit further along than what we've seen in the past. The other thing worth knowing from that video is down in the comments. Someone asked about grip input, and Brian confirmed that index style capacitive grabbing is possible on the Steam Frame controller. We kind of knew that already, but what's new is that games have to sort of opt into it. It's easier to set up in Steam VR input games than in OpenXR ones, and personally I'm glad it's even an option. I've always leaned towards the index style capacitive grab over a defined grip button like you have on the Quest. It just feels more natural to me, a bit more immersive, even if it can be a little inconsistent now and then. The only catch is that opt-in part. If a game or a game developer doesn't set it up, you're not getting it. And from what Brian's saying, that's more of an ask in OpenXR titles, and it might be too much work for some developers to implement. So it might come down to the individual game, which is a shame, but at least the hardware supports it. Now, what about you guys? Do you prefer the index style capacitive grab or a proper grip button press? Let me know in the comments below. Now, Brian also cleared up the embargo situation developers with the Steam Frame dev kit have. It's not a blanket NDA, it's more of a specific agreement, and Valve has given him permission to post the video he has, so that's the reason we're even getting to see this footage in the first place. Shout out to him, I'll link to his video in the description, and his game looks really cool. I'll be definitely checking it out. So that's pretty much where the Steam Frame is at right now. The hardware is clearly ready, it's sitting in warehouses, the backend is getting tidied up for launch, and we're just waiting on Valve to actually name the day and the price. And I'll be honest, I'm getting a little impatient with it. We can see everything lining up. Just tell us the date, tell us the price, especially the price please. And whenever this thing drops, I'll be covering it, if I can get my hands on it, that is. And if you guys enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like. If you hated it, leave a dislike and let me know what I can do to improve. And if you're into Steam, Steam Deck, Steam hardware and gaming handhelds, consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.